of Education through the CS announced that schools were going to be opened in January, but that seemed to have changed not too long ago when the CS made it clear that if the numbers do come down, and that's flattening the curve in regards to COVID-19, then schools might actually open a little earlier. But that's a discussion we'd like to have. And maybe just to hear from you at home, feel free to let us know what your thoughts are whether you feel that it is time for us to have our children go back to school. Now, joining me to have this conversation, we are joined by Reverend Yakio Kamau, who is a pastor, but also today doubling up and wearing the hat of a parent. Thank you for joining us, Reverend Yakio.
Thank you, Michael, for having me today.
All right. We are also going to be joined by Mr. Charles Ouma as we continue with the show, and he is a national chair for UpBet. And as soon as we have him ready, he's going to join us. But maybe just to get where you're coming from, Reverend Yakio, maybe just let us know how many children you have and how old they are.
Thank you, Michael, for having me today on the show. My name is Nyakio, and I'm a mother of three children. Primary school going children, one in grade 4, the other one in grade 2, and the other one in grade 1. Yes, those are my babies.
Okay, and COVID-19, of course, has really changed the dynamics of education. Maybe just briefly share for us your experience. Of course, this maybe first of all start by letting us know what kind of school, and by kind I mean, are they in 844? Are they homeschooling? What education system were you on?
So my first child, who's a son, he's in the SCE curriculum. That's the Accelerated Christian Education Program. So he goes to a school somewhere in Kajiado. I'm in Kajiado right now. The other two children, who are girls, they go to a school here in Kajiado still, one of the CITAM schools, and they're doing the CBC curriculum. So those are the two different curriculums that we are doing in our house at this point.
All right. And what has your experience been with the fact that schools were closed, COVID-19 came in, and of course, bringing in what we now call the new normal?
So for us, when schools were closed, I became teacher mommy. In fact, my children call me teacher mommy because being a pastor, the churches were closed, so I had more time to be at home, to take my children through the schooling. Thankfully, our schools have been able to have virtual learning. We've been blessed in that way. So they have their virtual classes through Google Meet. My son, I think, through Zoom meetings. And so that has been ongoing. And then just supervising for their different activities. They have different activities they need to do, the different homeworks they need to do, and submitting the same. So that has been my experience. And I must say, initially, it was hard. I was so thankful for teachers, all the teachers out there. Thank you so much for the work you do. I discovered a teacher is a very important person, let me tell you, because I would do it, and shortly, man, in the afternoon, I'd be so fatigued, I'd be so tired, I'd be thinking, wow, are we gonna hack it? But with time, I got a hang of it. So I've actually entertained the thought of homeschooling my children personally, because of how much I'm able to impact on them, pass on the value systems that I want as a parent to my children. And so for me, that has been the exciting part. The fact that I'm home has helped. I know for a number of parents, they may not be at home, so that can be a bit tricky. The use of gadgets, you have to purchase gadgets. That, of course, raises up the budget for the family. And seeing that we're in COVID and finances have really shifted. So that can also be another challenge that we experienced initially, but with time that we have been able to come through.
All right, I must say you're one of the parents who possibly are finding it different. Most of them have actually leaned towards complaining, because of the amount of work that their children are to handle, particularly in matters education. And this, of course, is because they're also not trained to do so. But maybe looking at the Ministry of Education and the direction they've given, have you felt as a parent taken care of in terms of the school system, given the kind of situation we are in?
I think the truth be told is that when COVID came, it found no one prepared. And so whether the schools, whether the government, whether at the parent level, nobody was prepared. We didn't even know it was going to go on for this long, as much as, of course, there were signs from other countries that had experienced COVID before that it was continuing. And so I feel one of the things I did is that I had a chat. I have a close relationship with the head teacher in our school. And so I had a chat and asked her, do you think we are ready? You see, if they are told to prepare, they will prepare accordingly to be ready to accept the children. But will the parent be ready? That was the other main question. And I'm not sure a lot of parents, there are some parents who are ready. And I think it's a tension, Michael, because you're feeling, I want my child to go back to school.
Right.
But then there's also what is happening on the ground. We want, yes, them to learn, but then I also want my child to be safe. So there's a bit of that tension. There's a bit of that conflict. You're feeling, am I sure they are safe, or will they come home with COVID? You know, so there's a bit of that tension that is there right now.
All right. Now, we have the CS for Education announced initially that schools were going to be reopened in January. But recently he said that should the curve come down and should the numbers reduce, then maybe schools may be reopened sooner. Are you confident as a parent that as a country we are ready to reopen the schools?
I think if the government is able to put the necessary measures, we can be ready. I've been online just checking a few of the countries that have been able to do that, and what they have put in, the kind of money that the governments have really injected into the whole process of the children going back to school. And it's become possible for some of those countries. I think if like the money that has come in, we are able to use that money wisely and inject it into the system, it is possible. There's nothing that is impossible, Michael.
All right.
I believe it is possible with things in place. Yeah.
Indeed, it would be possible. As a parent, what are some of the things that would make you confident? Or let me put it this, let me rephrase that. Are you confident right now? Should you be told to take your children to school, say next week, would you be comfortable to do so?
I'm not sure. And it's not that I'm fearful, but I'm feeling like things are not really where they should be in terms of my child going back to the classroom. Not yet, because there's a lot that needs to happen, a bit of negotiation, a bit of interaction with the parent and with the schools that be, and with the authorities that be, to just ensure that both the parent is comfortable, the child is comfortable, and even we also have to take care of the teacher, that the teacher is also comfortable to receive our children.
So if we divide that into three aspects, we have the facility or the infrastructure, we have the child or the learner, and we have the teacher, the tutor. Let me start with the child. What are some of the things for you as a parent you'd feel need to be in place before you can release your child to go to school?
Of course, there has to be social distancing that happens in the class, where the desks are put in with a different spacing that is required by the government. They must have the right paraphernalia. They must have the masks. And yet we know that the child to stay with a mask is kind of hard. I mean, even for you as a grown-up, you put on that thing and at some point you're thinking you want to throw it out. So that should be in place. And then we should have a bit of education to the child to let them know that this is what will happen. This is what you need to do when you go to school, the care you need to take, you need to wash your hands, you must have your mask on all the time, and things like that. So that needs to be in place for the child.
All right.
And then also,
I was going to ask now, then the next thing, of course, would be the facility, because when we look at majority of our schools, an average, a class has a student ratio of about 25 to 30 students to one teacher. Infrastructure, again, would be a challenge. What are some of the things that you'd expect government to have put in place for you to feel comfortable to take your child to that particular learning center?
So first of all, perhaps a survey could be done. You know, like it could be an online survey to see the readiness of the person, of the parent and the child to go back to school. Secondly, I think we may have to also consider having morning classes and afternoon classes to accommodate for some of the schools that have actually bigger numbers than what you're quoting, because a number of our public schools have bigger numbers than what you're quoting. So they may have to think in terms of, do we have some children go to school in the morning, some children go to school in the afternoon? what does that play out? It means we may need to employ more teachers. I mean, the whole thing is just crazy, man. So I think that also needs to happen. Maybe a bit of survey to see if is it possible, but maybe also the schools, the institutions may need to have more teachers, because you may wear out thinly the teachers, the resource that we have right now.
All right, and the next part, of course, was now going to be the teachers or the facilitators. And now that you have the experience of a teacher, you called yourself Teacher Mommy. Now that you have the experience of a teacher, what are some of the things that you feel that possibly need to be in place to protect and make the teacher have a comfortable environment where they can do their work?
Yeah, I mean, a teacher is so, so important. As I said, again, we really want to congratulate every teacher out there. And they need to be comfortable to know I'm receiving these children coming to my class. They're coming from different backgrounds. Could they be having this? They need to be, of course, that form of education. And you see, a teacher is an interactor. She wants to interact with the children. You closely want to go and check what is the child doing and writing on the papers. So I think all those things need to be set in place, protection for the teacher. The schools must provide for the teachers, the masks, sanitizers in class. I don't know how we're going to do the fumigations that we need to do every day, like in churches when we meet. After every service, we have to fumigate and all that. So that also needs to be in place for the teacher, so that the teacher can also be protected, because they're the ones taking care of our children for the whole term, for the whole year. Yeah.
All right. And you also intimated and mentioned that you would consider, out of this season, maybe out of the lessons you've learned, you might consider homeschooling. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think for me, it's just a personal thing that I have, having done the ACE curriculum, that I discovered that homeschooling can be an option, and perhaps this is something that the government might need to strengthen for the parent who feels, I want to go the homeschooling way, but put in place structures to help me. If I'm doing the CBC, for example, if I'm doing the CBC homeschooling program, I know schools that are thinking we will have physical classes, but they also are going on the online platform to be able to accommodate the children and the parent who's not comfortable taking their child to school. So I think for me, it's something we can explore. Maybe not long term, but for a season, just to help your child learn and just be there with your child at home, for the parent who's available to be able to do that. Yeah. Okay,
we sometimes spend a lot of time concentrating on the negative, maybe some of the positive things that you've learned, spending time with your children, now being Teacher Mommy. You certainly have been able to observe and implement some things maybe you only wished. Maybe just talk to us a little bit about some of those benefits and positive changes you see.
For me, just being able to stay at home with my children, I've been able to observe their character, like the one who gets annoyed quickly, and just seeing what makes you angry. So I become like a counselor also to my children. And you see, as a parent, you're the most reliable person to pass on values to your children. So I've been able to do that, just in the morning, taking time to pray with them, before we open the class, just to find out how are you doing, what are your struggles here and there. Of course, I also struggle. So I have a network of teachers that I talk to, and I say, in this place, I think I'm struggling here and there. So even as I'm teaching, I've learned to network, and to look at, because there's a lot of things that can go bad, but we must look at this cup as half full, not always half empty. And so that has been very helpful for me to just see my children grow. I mean, watch their eating habits, their behavior, be able to just lineage them, just like help them to go the right way.
All right, and I think as a country, this is an opportunity for us to have the discussion on what really is education. And I'd like to hear from you as a parent, as a pastor, as a mother. You wear quite a number of hats there. And your thoughts on education. We have for a long time looked at education as a classroom setup where we look at academics. But I want to believe that education is more wholesome than just sitting and cramming math and history. Your thoughts on what really education should be?
Yeah, I think education for me is very holistic, where you have the part of the classroom, the part of the instruction that you receive from the teacher, but then also the practical aspect, because we've been able to do practical aspects where you teach children, you need to make your beds, you need to clean up, you need to, like, delegating different duties in the house. Of course, there are those who are always complaining and saying, oh, mommy, you're always calling me and all that. But, you know, there's something that is being passed over to the children. And so that's something that needs to be encouraged, that it's holistic. Be able to go out, you know, just being in the compound. Of course, there's no going out to be. And as we were saying, a lot of the places that children go to have been closed. So that, of course, have been a bit of stress for them. Allowing them to go outside, ride their bicycles, you know, play with the other children in the neighborhood has been helpful to see them grow socially also. So there's that aspect. They grow intellectually, socially, emotionally, spiritually for us, because we're able to give them spiritual instruction as their parents. So I think that we have to look at it holistically that way, and not just that way. But and then also just thinking that we only think that a child has to go to school to learn. We have seen children learning from their homes, you know, virtually. And for those who are blessed, I guess in the urban areas, we've been blessed in that way. In the rural areas, I think there's a bit of a different struggle right there. But we are grateful in that way that we've been able to learn that way.
All right, and we are now joined by Charles Ouma, who is the National Chair for ABET, and ABET is Alternative Provision for Basic Education and Training, formerly known as non-formal education or non-formal schools. Charles Ouma, thank you for joining us. We apologize for the challenges that we've had. We would have wanted to have you earlier, but all the same, better late than never. Your thoughts, first of all, on whether we are ready as a country to open up the schools?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry. I apologize for the technical inches.
No problem.
This morning I was very much ready to join you much earlier, but thank God. Yes, the subject of are we ready to reopen the school is really challenging. Oh my.
What are your thoughts? I can hear you. Do you think as a country we're ready to open up the schools?
As a country, I think we are not ready to open up the school. My reason for that is in three areas. One, I don't think we are ready in terms of distancing if COVID-19 is real. Two, I don't think we are ready in exposing or sensitizing the parents of what needs to be done from home to schools if COVID-19 is real. Three, I don't think we are ready with our teaching staff. We are sensitizing them enough to handle the children in schools if COVID-19 is real. I stick to the word COVID-19. If it is real, then I don't think we are ready, my friend.
All right, and I don't know, I'm just wondering, you keep saying if it is real. It sounds like you doubt that it exists, but I'll assume that's just an expression. What is it that you'd want put in place, or you'd feel put in place for us to be comfortable to now say we are almost getting to where we can open up the schools?
I thank you for that, because in that line, I want to appreciate the ministry released some funds yesterday to schools. I want to see rehabilitations of infrastructures of schools taking place, because when we talk of distances, then we are talking of adding more additional classes or renovating the already existing classes. That will make a distance, the social distance of the learners to learn in a more environmental friendly. Two, I would want to see the parents sensitized. I'm not convinced that the sensitization going on through the media and through the local administrator is enough to sensitize the people. I want to see it trickling down, that the parents knows that COVID-19 is real, and as they take their children to schools, they take the responsibility from home to school.
Okay, and maybe your advice to the Ministry of Education. We've had the Minister of the CS for Education, Professor Magoha, mention that we could open up schools sooner than January. What would your comments to him be should you have an opportunity to address that?
If I would have an opportunity to talk to Professor Magoha, definitely I would tell him we are not ready until measures of sensitization and infrastructures are put in place. Those are two fundamental issues that we cannot run away from. Professor Magoha needs to release funds for development of infrastructures to schools, so that the schools will be ready to attain or to admit the learners.
All right, we have been told that COVID-19 is here to stay, and we might as well get used to working with it, being with us. So what do you see as the way forward? Expansion of classrooms? Do we need to maybe think about community learning, where we decentralize and we don't have to go to a particular school, but have learning centers within our communities to avoid people, crisscrossing? What do you think is the best way forward?
Two things. My best way of looking at it, we must expand our infrastructures. Two, we must ask TSC to employ teachers. Three, we must support or empower the APBET schools and private schools to be able to inlet the number that will be out of their reach. Because even right now, the number that has been taken in by private and APBET schools is a very huge number. That is because the public schools cannot be able to take everyone in the school. Therefore, I would also advocate to Professor Magoha to think critically of empowering the APBET schools and private schools.
All right. And I'll come back to you. Let me go to Reverend Yakio. Given the same opportunity, what aspects would you advise ministry? And this is not advice from an expert, but from experience as now being teacher mommy.
Definitely, measures have to be put in place so that the parent will feel comfortable bringing their child back to school, and the child also will also feel comfortable, and the teacher. But as our brother was saying, there is important that infrastructure be put in place. Now, I don't know how long that would take, because as you say, COVID is here to stay with us. And one of the things I've discovered is that in this season, people have learned to be very innovative. So we have to think out of the box. If we need to include this community-based learning, which I think is a wonderful idea, I think we can also include it as we go back to school.
Right.
Without throwing it out, not throwing out the baby and the bathwater. Let's retain what is good and learn from it, and also learn from the countries that have opened. I know we can say that they are very first world, they're developed countries that have been able to manage it, but we are also able to manage it within what we have. If we just have people who are consistent, people who are faithful, we remove all those people who are just there, taking money and eating the money and just putting the money to the use that it has been released for. I think we will make some form of progress and will not be in the same position talking today, having this same conversation come January next year.
All right, and thank you very much, Reverend Yakio. Let me come to Mr. Charles Oma. Your closing remarks very briefly.
My closing remarks would be, I would really appeal to the Ministry of Education through Professor Magoha to rethink of when he is going around assessing schools, he needs to release funds for more development of schools and renovations. I think of the overcrowded schools with thousands of learners, and we talk of social distance. This should have happened yesterday, not even today. The ministry needs to move with speed. To the community schools, we need to see a more comprehensive approach to the community schools so that we are not left behind. It is really challenging to see in the community how children are moving around without learning going on. For sure, it is my humble appeal, not only to the ministry, but even to the head of states, that we see to it that the children go back to school at all expenses. We could cut costs and make sure education is being undertaken in Kenya.
Right.
That is the engine, that is the factory of all brains in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Mr. Charles Ouma, who is the National Chair for ABET, which is Alternative Provision for Basic Education and Training, formerly known as non-formal schools. We also had Reverend Nyakio Kamau, who is a pastor and a mother, who was giving us her experience of what COVID-19 has taught her in terms of teaching her children. But